The Harmonia lurched violently, its quantum stabilizers screaming in protest as another micro-meteorite barrage peppered the ship's reinforced hull. Captain Elena Rodriguez gripped the navigation controls, her augmented cybernetic hand leaving microscopic indentations in the titanium alloy interface. Blood trickled from a half-sealed wound at her temple, a souvenir from their recent encounter with the Syndicate raiders. "Status report," she barked, her voice a razor-sharp command that cut through the controlled chaos of the bridge. Lieutenant Marco Reyes, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays, responded with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd survived too many impossible missions. Hull integrity at 62%. Quantum drive is down to 40% capacity. We've got maybe 12 hours of full operational mode before we're nothing more than cosmic debris. The bridge crew, a collection of humanity's most desperate and talented survivors, moved with a synchronicity born of weeks of constant near-death experiences. They were the remnants of Earth's last hope, a scientific and military expedition that had been cast out into the solar system's most unforgiving region with a simple, impossible mandate: find resources, find hope, or don't come back. Elena's eyes narrowed as she studied the asteroid belt's chaotic landscape. This wasn't just a mission. This was survival. The Earth they'd left behind was dying, choked by centuries of environmental collapse, resource wars, and the final devastating impact of multiple climate cascades. Their home was no longer a planet, but a mausoleum of human potential. "Aisha," Elena called to the ship's quantum physicist, "what are those energy signatures?" Dr. Aisha Kimathi adjusted her neural interface, holographic data streams cascading around her like liquid lightning. Her dark skin was pale with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with an intensity that had become the hallmark of humanity's last generation. "That's the thing, Captain. These readings, they're impossible." The main view screen flickered, revealing a massive asteroid that seemed to pulse with an internal rhythm. Unlike the surrounding space debris, cold, inert, lifeless, this object seemed to breathe. Subtle energy waves rippled across its surface, creating patterns that defied conventional physics. "Impossible how?" Marco interjected, his hand instinctively moving to the weapon systems. Aisha's laugh was more of a sharp bark. "Impossible like everything else we've survived. The energy signature is alive. It's not just radiation or electromagnetic interference. It's responding to something. To us." The ship's chief engineer, a heavily augmented veteran named Kai Chen, spoke up from his station. Half of his body was mechanical, a testament to the brutal wars that had driven humanity to the stars. "We're running on fumes. If this is another wild goose chase, we won't have enough power to." "We don't have a choice," Elena interrupted. Her cybernetic eye, a replacement after losing the original in the Jakarta uprising, zoomed in on the asteroid, revealing microscopic details that should have been invisible. "We're 3 days from complete system failure. This is our last shot." The desperation was palpable. Humanity had been pushed to the absolute edge of extinction. Their colonies on Mars had collapsed 5 years ago. The lunar bases were nothing more than tombs. This expedition was literally humanity's final throw of the dice, a last-ditch effort to find something, anything that could give them a chance of survival. Marco's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "What if it's another trap? The Syndicate. The Syndicate is the least of our problems." Elena cut him off. "We've got 12 hours of operational capability. 12 hours to find something that can save what's left of our species." The asteroid seemed to pulse in response, its surface shifting in ways that defied the basic principles of planetary geology. It was almost as if the massive space rock was watching them, considering them. Aisha's instruments went wild. "Captain, I'm detecting." Her words were cut short by a massive energy surge that momentarily blinded every sensor on the bridge. When the interference cleared, the asteroid had changed. What had moments ago been a seemingly inert chunk of space rock now looked like something else entirely. something that was definitely watching them, something that was definitely alive, and something that was definitely not from any human or known alien origin. Marco Reyes knew pain intimately. It wasn't the physical wounds that marked his body, the neural burn scars from the Jakarta communication grid collapse, or the molecular reconstruction patches that kept his left lung functioning, but the deeper, resonant pain of lost memories that truly defined him. As the ship's communication systems went haywire, Marco found himself trapped between reality and something else entirely. The artifact's energy pulse synchronized with his heartbeat, creating a neural feedback loop that threatened to tear his consciousness apart. "I'm losing him," Aisha shouted, her quantum-linked neural interface desperately trying to stabilize Marco's vital signs. Kai Chen worked frantically at the medical station, quantum stabilization nanobots swarming around Marco's convulsing body. Captain Alina Rodriguez watched in stunned silence. Years of military training, countless battles, and survival against impossible odds had never prepared her for this moment. The artifact's energy wasn't just interfering with their systems, it was communicating, and Marco was its chosen conduit. Memories flooded Marco's mind, not his own, but fragments of something ancient, vast, and impossibly complex. Images of civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humanity's first fire. Sonic landscapes that defied conventional understanding of sound and time. In that moment of absolute chaos, something extraordinary happened. Marco began to sing. It wasn't a conscious choice. The song erupted from somewhere deeper than thought, deeper than memory. A fusion of the street rap he'd learned in the ruined megacities of his childhood and the classical opera his grandmother had taught him before the final Jakarta collapse. Each note was a weapon, each rhythm a complex mathematical equation, each breath a quantum probability shift. The ship's systems, which moments ago had been on the verge of complete failure, began to stabilize. Quantum drives hummed with renewed energy. Molecular repair systems activated with unprecedented efficiency. The artifact itself seemed to pulse in resonance with Marco's improvised performance. Kai Chen's augmented eye widened in disbelief. The energy signature. It's not just responding. It's healing. The ship's quantum matrix is regenerating at a rate I've never seen before. Aisha's neural interface was overloading with data. "This isn't just communication," she whispered. "It's translation. The artifact is learning our language, our most fundamental language, through music." Marco's song continued, a brutal, beautiful fusion of human survival and something entirely alien. Memories not his own cascaded through his consciousness. Civilizations that had risen and fallen, communication methods beyond human comprehension, sonic technologies that could reshape matter itself. The bridge crew watched in a mixture of terror and awe. Captain Rodriguez understood something fundamental was happening. Humanity was being tested, evaluated, measured against some cosmic standard they couldn't yet comprehend. As the last notes of Marco's impossible song faded, the artifact's energy signature changed. No longer was it a passive object. It had become something alive, something watching, something hungry for more. Marco collapsed, his body trembling. But his eyes, when they opened, were different, filled with a knowledge that stretched beyond human understanding. "It wants to hear more," he whispered, blood trickling from his nose. "We're not just being observed, we're being invited." Kai checked the ship's systems. Impossibly, they were better than they'd been in months. The quantum drives showed 87% regeneration. Molecular integrity was at 94%. It was as if the ship had been completely rebuilt in the span of a few minutes. "What the hell just happened?" Alina demanded, her cybernetic eye scanning Marco with intense scrutiny. Aisha's response was measured, scientific, yet filled with an undercurrent of something close to religious awe. "First contact," she said, but not the way anyone ever expected. Outside the ship's viewport, the asteroid, no, the artifact, continued to pulse, not with the random energy of before, but with a rhythm that matched Marco's heartbeat, a perfect, mathematical synchronization that suggested something far more profound than simple coincidence. Humanity had just been given an invitation, and the price of admission was nothing less than their most fundamental form of expression. Music. Dr. Aisha Kimathi's laboratory had always been a controlled chaos of quantum possibilities, but now it bordered on the miraculous. Holographic displays danced with impossible data, tracking the artifact's response to different musical frequencies. Marco's earlier performance had been more than a communication attempt. It was a key that had unlocked something profound. "It's a weapon system," she muttered, her fingers tracing complex quantum algorithms that seemed to defy the basic laws of physics. But not like anything we've ever conceived. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood nearby, her cybernetic eye scanning the data with a predatory intensity. "Explain." Aisha pulled up a holographic representation that shifted and morphed with each musical note. "Traditional weapons are about destruction. This is about probability manipulation. Each musical frequency creates a different quantum state, a different potential reality." She demonstrated, playing a series of musical clips through the ship's quantum resonance chamber. A classical Mozart piece generated a plasma shield that could deflect high-energy particle streams. A jazz improvisation created localized electromagnetic pulses capable of disabling complex technological systems. A heavy metal riff produced a molecular disruption field that could theoretically tear apart matter at its most fundamental level. Kai Chen, the ship's chief engineer, watched in a mixture of scientific fascination and growing excitement. "It's not just a weapon," he said, his augmented voice carrying a note of reverence. "It's a universal translation device. Music is a language of pure potential." Their moment of discovery was brutally interrupted. The ship's proximity alarms screamed to life. On the main view screen, a massive syndicate warship emerged from quantum stealth, its predatory hull bristling with weaponry that represented the worst of human technological evolution. The syndicate, remnants of corporate warfare that had nearly destroyed Earth, had been hunting the Harmonia for weeks. They'd wanted the artifact. They wanted the potential it represented. "Incoming transmission," Marco called out, his voice still slightly ragged from his earlier encounter with the artifact. The holographic communication flickered to life. Commander Viktor Volkov, the syndicate's most ruthless pursuit captain, sneered at them. "Surrender the artifact. You have no chance of surviving this encounter." Elena's response was instant, "Not happening." What followed was unlike any space battle in human history. Kai began to play an intricate electronic composition through the ship's systems. The artifact responded immediately, generating a quantum probability field that made the Harmonia simultaneously exist in multiple potential positions. Syndicate targeting systems went haywire, unable to lock onto a single quantum state. Marco followed with a vocal performance, a fusion of operatic technique and street-level rhythm that generated focused electromagnetic pulses. The syndicate ship's weapon systems began to destabilize, circuits breaking down at the molecular level. Aisha's contribution was perhaps the most extraordinary. Using a complex mathematical sequence disguised as a musical composition, she generated a quantum entanglement field that began to literally deconstruct the syndicate ship's molecular structure. "This isn't just combat," Aisha shouted over the controlled chaos. "This is communication. We're telling them a story, our story, through the only universal language that exists." The syndicate ship began to break apart, not through conventional weapon damage, but through a systematic deconstruction that followed the precise mathematical patterns of the music. It was less an attack and more a complex, violent translation. Commander Volkov's final transmission was a mixture of terror and grudging respect. "What are you?" He managed to transmit before his ship dissolved into quantum foam. Elena watched the disappearing vessel, her cybernetic eye recording every moment. "We're humanity," she said quietly. "And we're just getting started." The artifact pulsed in response, as if agreeing. Outside the ship's viewport, the asteroid that was not an asteroid continued to watch, waiting, evaluating, inviting. Humanity had just demonstrated that its most profound weapon was not technology, not brute force, but something far more complex: creativity, adaptation, the ability to turn even destruction into a form of communication. The holographic tribunal materialized around the harmonious bridge with surgical precision. Beings of pure energy, crystalline structures, and quantum-locked consciousness surrounded the human crew. They were the adjudicators, a collective that had monitored species across galaxies for millions of years, waiting, watching, evaluating. Captain Alina Rodriguez stood perfectly still, her cybernetic eye calibrating to the unprecedented sensory input. Marco Reyes and Dr. Aisha Kamathi flanked her, their bodies tense but united. The artifact pulsed between them, no longer just an object, but a living testimony to humanity's potential. Species designation: human. The primary adjudicator spoke, if spoke was the right term for a communication that simultaneously existed as sound, light, and pure thought. Final evaluation stage initiated. A crystalline being that seemed composed of infinite geometric patterns stepped forward. Its form shifted with each movement, revealing glimpses of civilizations, long extinct, of cosmic histories that predated human comprehension. "You stand accused," the being announced, "of potential universal disruption." Aisha's scientific mind raced. This was more than a trial. This was a cosmic assessment of humanity's right to exist, to expand, to interact with the broader galactic community. The artifact began to project memories, not just of the harmonious crew, but of humanity's entire trajectory. The rise of civilization, the brutal wars, the environmental collapses, the moments of extraordinary creativity and devastating destruction. Each moment played out in a quantum symphony that defied linear narrative. Marco realized first what was happening. "It's not just showing our history," he whispered. "It's translating our entire existence into a form they can understand." The adjudicators watched as human history unfolded. The development of music, the first cave paintings, the construction of the Great Pyramids, the development of quantum computing, the final environmental wars, the desperate exodus from Earth. Each moment was a note in a complex composition. "Your species exhibits extreme volatility," another adjudicator proclaimed. Its form was liquid light, constantly shifting and reforming. Potential for self-destruction is 87.6% across multiple probability matrices. Elena stepped forward. Unlike most human leaders before her, she didn't beg. She didn't apologize. She challenged. "We are not perfect," she stated, her voice cutting through the cosmic tribunal like a quantum blade. "But we adapt. We create. We survive." The artifact pulsed in synchronization with her words, translating her statement into a mathematical language of pure potential. Aisha began to explain, not with words, but with a scientific demonstration. She used the artifact to project humanity's most profound achievements. Not just technological milestones, but moments of extraordinary creativity. A child's first song, a mathematical breakthrough, an act of unexpected compassion. The adjudicators seemed to pause. Computation was happening at speeds beyond human comprehension. Marco understood something fundamental was occurring. This wasn't just a trial. This was first contact of the most profound kind. Humanity was being asked to prove its worth not through military might, not through technological advancement, but through its capacity for creativity, adaptation, and hope. "We are more than our potential for destruction," Elena continued. "We are the species that turns pain into music, turns survival into art, turns limitation into opportunity." The artifact began to resonate. No longer just a passive object, it became a living translator, converting human potential into a language the adjudicators could comprehend. Kai Chen, who had been silent until now, added the final piece. He played a short musical sequence on a quantum-linked instrument. It was a melody that contained the mathematical complexity of human survival, the emotional depth of human experience, the relentless hope that had driven humanity to the stars. The adjudicators went silent. Computation happened. Civilizations were weighed. Potential was measured. And for the first time in their million-year history, the adjudicators found themselves uncertain. Humanity waited. The artifact pulsed. The universe listened. The performance began without warning. Each crew member became an instrument, their individual stories transforming into a living, breathing composition that defied the boundaries of conventional communication. The artifact acted as both conductor and amplifier, translating raw human experience into a quantum language of pure potential. Marco Reyes went first. His memories erupted like a sonic weapon, fractured images of the Jakarta megacity collapse, where he'd been a child communication grid engineer. The holographic projection showed a young boy navigating the ruins of a once great metropolis, using improvised communication systems to coordinate survivor rescue. His childhood was a symphony of desperation and hope, of technology cobbled together from broken dreams. The quantum-linked neural projectors translated each memory into a complex musical sequence. A staccato rhythm represented the emergency communication protocols. A mournful melody captured the loss of his family. The underlying beat spoke of resilience, of a child who refused to be defeated by total societal collapse. Dr. Aisha Kimethi followed. Her narrative was a different kind of music, the precise, mathematical composition of a quantum physicist who had fought against genetic discrimination. Born with a rare genetic condition that should have killed her before birth, she had instead transformed her own body into a living experiment of human adaptation. Her memories played out as a complex algorithmic composition. Each scientific breakthrough was a musical note. Her struggles against a system that would have discarded her became a counterpoint of defiance. The adjudicators watched as her life unfolded, not as a linear story, but as a multidimensional musical piece that demonstrated humanity's capacity for self-modification and survival. Kai Chen's contribution was perhaps the most brutal. A veteran of the resource wars, his memories were a harsh industrial symphony. The dismantling of entire cities, the reconstruction of human society from its most fundamental components. His body, half organic, half machine, was a living testament to human adaptability. Industrial sounds merged with human breathing. The rhythm of mechanical reconstruction intertwined with the organic pulse of human determination. Each memory was a gear, each experience a complex machine of survival. Captain Alina Rodriguez's narrative hit with the force of a quantum shockwave. She had been there during the final Earth evacuation, the last captain to leave humanity's dying homeworld. Her memories were a requiem and a battle cry, a composition of loss, of rage, of unbreakable hope. Burning cities, collapsing ecosystems, the desperate launch of the final colony ships. But underneath it all, a persistent melody of human resistance. Not just survival, but the fundamental refusal to be extinguished. The artifact amplified their collective experience. What had begun as individual memories became a unified composition, a living, breathing demonstration of human potential. The adjudicators found themselves experiencing something unprecedented. This was more than a historical review. This was a living, breathing organism of collective experience. Humanity was not presenting its history. Humanity was performing its very essence. Marco's childhood survival techniques merged with Aisha's scientific innovation. Kai's industrial reconstruction blended with Alina's leadership. Each individual story became a note in a larger, more complex symphony. And beneath it all, the artifact pulsed, not just recording, not just translating, but actively participating. For the first time, the adjudicators understood that they were not just observing a species. They were witnessing the birth of a new form of cosmic communication. Humanity was not just presenting its past, it was composing its future. The performance reached its crescendo. 1,000,000 moments of pain, a billion instances of hope, the entire history of a species reduced to and expanded by pure, fundamental music. The universe listened. And for the first time in millennia, The cosmic observers were silent. The first indication of betrayal came as a microscopic quantum fluctuation, almost imperceptible, but to Dr. Aisha Kimathi's hypersensitive instruments, it was a discordant note in the cosmic symphony. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Delgado had been with the crew since the final Earth evacuation. A communications specialist with an impeccable record, decorated multiple times for his work in emergency response protocols. His neural implants were state-of-the-art, his credentials beyond reproach, which made his betrayal all the more devastating. The artifact pulsed a warning milliseconds before the attack began. Marco Reis caught the first quantum resonance, his enhanced hearing picking up a subsonic frequency that didn't match the ship's harmonics. "Captain," he called out, his voice sharp with sudden tension. "We've got." The ship exploded into chaos. Delgado's neural implants transformed, revealing themselves as a sophisticated infiltration system far beyond standard human technology. Quantum-locked circuitry emerged from his skin, converting his entire body into a living weapon designed to neutralize the artifact. "The Harmonist Collective sends its regards," Delgado spoke, but it wasn't truly his voice. It was a multi-layered communication, part sound, part quantum transmission, part pure information. Captain Alina Rodriguez moved with the precision of someone who had survived 1,000 impossible scenarios. Her cybernetic eye locked onto Delgado, analyzing threat vectors in microseconds. "Kai," she called, "quantum containment." The ship's chief engineer was already in motion. His augmented body merged with the ship's defensive systems, creating a living quantum barrier that began to resonate at frequencies designed to disrupt molecular cohesion. But Delgado was prepared. A quantum disruption field erupted from his body, momentarily shorting out the ship's primary systems. For 3 critical heartbeats, the Harmonia was blind, deaf, vulnerable. The artifact responded first. What had been a passive object transformed. Geometric patterns emerged from its surface, creating a defensive matrix that was part technology, part living music. Each potential attack vector was met with a corresponding musical frequency that neutralized the threat before it could fully form. Aisha realized something profound was happening. "It's not just defending," she shouted over the quantum interference. "It's learning, adapting. The artifact is turning the attack into a form of communication." Delgado's attack was more than a simple betrayal. It was a test. A probing assault designed to understand the artifact's capabilities, to measure humanity's responsive potential. Marco began to sing. It wasn't a conscious choice. The music erupted from somewhere deeper than thought, a quantum-linked response that transformed the ship's very molecular structure. Each note became a defensive algorithm, each breath a probability shift that made the Harmonia simultaneously exist and not exist. The Harmonist infiltration systems began to break down. Kai's augmented body became a living quantum conductor. Industrial sounds merged with biological rhythms, creating a defensive frequency that began to deconstruct Delgado's infiltration systems at their most fundamental level. Alina's leadership became a weapon. Her commands were no longer just verbal instructions, but quantum-locked communication protocols that reorganized the ship's defensive capabilities in real time. Delgado screamed, a sound that was part human pain, part technological failure. The artifact pulsed one final time. What had begun as an attack became a translation. The Harmonist infiltration systems were systematically broken down, not through destruction, but through a complete and total understanding. Every quantum of information was absorbed, analyzed, transformed. When silence finally returned to the ship's bridge, Delgado was gone. Not dead, not destroyed, transformed. A single holographic message remained. Potential recognized. Communication, INITIAED. Kai checked the ship's systems. Somehow, impossibly, they were stronger than before the attack. The artifact had not just defended. It had evolved. Captain Rodriguez looked at her crew. Status. Marco's response was calm. "We're ready for whatever comes next." The universe listened. And for the first time, Humanity had spoken a language it truly understood. The harmonists materialized on the bridge like living sound waves, beams of pure quantum potential, their forms shifting between particle and wave, between matter and pure information. They were the oldest known civilization in the known universe, collectors of species potential, evaluators of cosmic possibility. You are an anomaly. The primary harmonist spoke, its voice a complex symphony that existed simultaneously in multiple sound spectrums. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood her ground. Behind her, the artifact pulsed, no longer just an object, but a living translation device that had become something more. Dr. Aisha Kamathi's scientific mind raced. The harmonists weren't just observing. They were revealing the true nature of their cosmic filtering system, a test that had evaluated thousands of species across millions of years. Of the 17,342 species we have encountered, the harmonist continued, its form creating holographic representations of failed civilizations. You are the first to demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding of our test that has become, paradoxically, your greatest strength. The holographic display showed a rapid succession of species, each one meticulously categorized, evaluated, and ultimately deemed unsuitable for further cosmic interaction. Mechanical civilizations, pure energy beings, quantum-locked intelligences, each had failed the fundamental test of adaptive potential. Marco Reyes understood first. The music, he whispered. It was never about perfection. It was about transformation. The artifact began to project the accumulated data of human history. But this was no linear narrative. It was a quantum composition, each moment of human existence simultaneously a failure and a triumph, a destruction and a creation. The harmonists showed humanity's most devastating moments. The resource wars, the environmental collapses, the brutal conflicts that had nearly extinguished the species multiple times. But underneath each moment of destruction was an equally powerful current of creation. A child learning to play a violin in a refugee camp. A mathematician solving an impossible equation during a planetary evacuation. An engineer rebuilding communication systems from salvaged technology. Artists creating beauty in the midst of total devastation. Most species, the harmonist explained, seek optimization, perfection, a fixed state of existence. Humanity had done something entirely different. They had turned survival itself into an art form. Kai Chen's augmented body became a living demonstration, half organic, half machine, a testament to human ability to not just survive, but to fundamentally redefine the concept of existence. Each of his mechanical components told a story of adaptation, of turning limitation into opportunity. The artifact translated their collective experience into a language beyond sound, beyond mathematics, beyond conventional understanding. You misunderstood the test, the harmonist said, and in doing so, you became its truest expression. Most species, when confronted with the artifact, attempted to solve it, to understand it through logic, through scientific method, through pure computational power. Humanity had done something else entirely. They had played with it. They had turned the cosmic evaluation into a performance. Elena's laugh cut through the cosmic communication like a quantum blade. We're not here to be perfect, she said. We're here to be possible. The artifact pulsed in agreement. The harmonists showed humanity the accumulated data of their test. Thousands of species, evaluated across millions of years, each one a note in a vast cosmic composition. Humanity was different. Where others saw a test to be solved, humans saw an invitation to create. Where others sought optimization, humans embraced chaos. Where others wanted answers, humans asked new questions. You are an impossible equation, the harmonist concluded, a living contradiction, a species that survives not despite its flaws, but because of them. Marco, Aisha, Kai, Elena, each of them understood something profound in that moment. They weren't just representing humanity. They were redefining what it meant to be a sentient species in the universe, The artifact continued to pulse, not as a weapon, not as a test, but as an invitation to something entirely new. The moment of choice arrived with the subtlety of a quantum probability shift. The harmonists presented humanity with an ultimatum that was simultaneously an invitation, a challenge, and a cosmic crossroads. Before them lay a navigational interface that could chart courses through regions of space no civilization had ever successfully traversed. But this was no simple map. It was a living, breathing quantum probability matrix that would respond only to a specific type of navigation, one that defied every known principle of space travel. "You must compose your path," the primary harmonist communicated, its form rippling with layers of potential realities. Captain Elena Rodriguez understood immediately. This wasn't about mathematical precision or technological superiority. This was about something far more fundamental: creativity. The bridge of the Harmonia transformed. The artifact became more than an object. It was now a living navigational instrument that would translate human intention into cosmic trajectory. Marco Reyes took the primary interface, but not as a traditional pilot would. His hands moved like a conductor, his body becoming an instrument of pure potential. Dr. Aisha Kimathi provided the mathematical understructure, complex quantum algorithms that danced between possibility and probability. Kai Chen's augmented systems became the physical translator, converting musical and mathematical intention into actual spatial movement. The first notes were tentative, a jazz improvisation that mapped potential routes through a region of space that had destroyed thousands of previous expeditions. Each musical phrase became a vector, each harmonic progression a potential trajectory. The universe listened. Holographic displays showed impossible things, quantum pathways that twisted and turned, creating routes that shouldn't exist. The navigation wasn't about finding the shortest distance between 2 points. It was about finding the most creative path. Where traditional navigation sought efficiency, human navigation sought possibility. Regions of space that had been considered impassable began to shift. Quantum barriers became permeable. Impossible distances compressed and expanded based on the complexity of the musical composition. "We are not solving a problem," Aisha shouted, her voice part scientific observation, part artistic declaration. "We are performing the solution." The harmonists watched in what could only be described as wonder. Each crew member contributed something unique. Elena's leadership became a rhythmic foundation. Marco's improvisational skills created unexpected vectors. Kai's technical precision provided structure. Baisha's mathematical genius gave the performance scientific credibility. The artifact pulsed in synchronization, translating human potential into cosmic movement. They were charting a course through a region that had consumed thousands of previous expeditions, but they weren't just navigating. They were composing, creating, transforming the very nature of spatial exploration. Holographic displays showed their progression, a living, breathing musical score that was simultaneously a navigational chart, a scientific breakthrough, and a work of art. The harmonists' communication became something close to excitement. "No species has ever." Their statement was cut short. Humanity was doing the impossible, again. The ship moved not in straight lines, but in complex, beautiful arcs. Each movement a note, each trajectory a phrase in a larger composition. They were writing a new language of exploration, one that didn't just move through space but danced with it. As they approached the most dangerous region of their journey, the artifact made its final transformation. No longer just a technology, no longer just a test, it became a true partner. A living instrument that responded to human creativity with its own form of quantum intelligence. "We're not just exploring," Elena said, her voice a mixture of scientific precision and pure wonder. "We're performing." The final approach was a symphony. Mathematical precision merged with pure artistic expression. Scientific calculation danced with creative improvisation. And for a moment, just a moment, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. They emerged on the other side, where thousands of previous expeditions had been destroyed, The Harmonia sailed through, not just surviving, but transforming the very nature of space exploration. The Harmonists' final communication was simple. Welcome to the conversation. Humanity had done more than pass a test. They had rewritten the rules of cosmic interaction.